Welcome, class, to our next subphylum, the Uniramians. This is our insects. Sometimes they're called hexapods because they have 6 legs. So you should know all the terms, Uniramians and Hexapoda. They belong, if you're looking at their classification, they belong to kingdom Animalia, phylum Arthropoda, subphylum Uniramia, and class Insecta. If you are someone who studies insects, you are an entomologist. And then they have taken and broken down in the insect class into 30 orders based on their characteristics, like their mouth parts, how many wings they have, what their development looks like. This is the most abundant and diverse animal class. There's about 1 million plus species that they have identified. Some entomologists think there could be as many as 30 million other species out there that they haven't found yet. There are more species of insects than all other animals combined. They literally can take over the world. You will find them everywhere. And why are they so successful? Well, they can fly to catch prey or escape from other animals. They have a light, strong exoskeleton. They're small, so many of them can live in one place and they don't really have to compete much. They have short lifespans and have lots of eggs, so natural selection can occur more quickly. That means if their environment changes, more of them are likely to survive than larger animals. And they can live almost anywhere. You'll find them in the air, land, soil. Some of them live as parasites for plants and animals. They live in freshwater systems. They're not sure if there's marine species. Like I said, there could be 30 million others out there. So characteristics of insects. They will have 3 body regions, all of them. They have a head, thorax, and an abdomen. Their abdomen usually has somewhere between 9 and 11 segments. They do have mandibles, which is the jaw. They have 1 pair of antennae and 3 pairs of legs, or 6 legs. They will have 2 pairs of wings. 1 pair you'll see in flies. Some don't have wings at all. They can have a pair of compound eyes. They do have an open circulatory system, and they do use spiracles for respiration. Here's some insect anatomy. You can see where things are located. So for circulation, we said insects have open circulation. Their blood is called hemolymph, and they do have a heart that moves their blood around. For some, their heart is in their thorax. Some of them have the heart more located in their abdomen. You'll get to see where the heart is on a grasshopper because we'll be dissecting them. For respiration and excretion, respiration, they use a system of trachea that exchange oxygen and carbon dioxide, and like we had mentioned before, the oxygen gets in through the spiracles. Then they use Malpighian tubules to collect water and cellular waste from their hemolymph, and that's kind of like their kidneys. For insects that live in dry environments, it helps them conserve water very easily. Diagram showing you the side view. Pay attention to the spiracles and the trachea. The spiracles are located almost on every abdominal segment. I think it's just the end one there that doesn't have a spiracle on it. This is a different view where you can see the tracheal tubes coming in from the sides of the body, and they run all the way up and down the length of their body so they can transfer oxygen throughout their little bodies to all their cells. This shows you the excretory portion, the Malpighian tubules that collect nitrogen waste and remove it. It's taken out as uric acid. That's the type of ammonia waste that they release. For a nervous system, they do have a brain and a ventral nerve cord with ganglia that are located in each segment. The ganglia are kind of little nerve bundles that help relay messages. The nerves extend from the brain to the antenna, the eyes, and other sense organs. And they have simple eyes that can detect changes in light intensity, and then their compound eyes can form images and detect movement. They do have a sound sensing organ called a tympanum. We have a sound sensing organ called a tympanum as well, and that's our eardrum. On them, their tympanum is located on their abdomen, and you'll be able to see it very easily on the grasshopper. It's located right behind their large jumping leg. But it's this oval-shaped membrane that covers an air-filled cavity on the side of their abdomen, and it vibrates when there's sound. And then there are nerve cells that are attached that can detect the vibrations and transmit that information. Insects will also have sensory hairs on their body, so they can detect movement very easily, and they're very sensitive. Some feeding adaptations. Insect mouth parts are adapted to each one's food source. So each one will look different depending on what their main food is. Mosquitoes will have thin, long mouth parts that are tube-like so that they can suck blood. Fly mouth parts are more like sponges because they like to soak up liquids that are in the environment. And here's just a piercing mouth part up close. When an arthropod or an insect specifically is eating, the food enters their mouth, it's moistened by salivary glands, and then it passes through their esophagus into the crop. The crop is used mainly for storage. And then from the crop, the food passes into the gizzard where it gets ground up. Then this shredded food will enter the midgut, kind of like a stomach, where it's soaked with enzymes that's secreted from gastric ceca. These nutrients get absorbed in the intestine, and then the wastes are moved into the hindgut and out through the anus. This type of insect actually digs a little hole and hides there until its prey comes by, and then it jumps out and grabs it and drags it into the hole. This is a little animation of what they would do. For reproduction, all insects will have separate sexes. During mating, the male will deposit sperm into the female seminal receptacle, where they're stored until the eggs are released by the ovaries, and then they can fertilize the eggs. After the eggs are released, they get fertilized internally, and the last segment of the female's abdomen is called, it has an organ called an ovipositor, and she uses this to dig a hole in the soil where she lays her fertilized eggs. And you can tell the difference between males and females because that ovipositor is quite an extension off of their abdomen. Here's a diagram that shows you how to identify the ovipositor. You'll want to make a note that this is it sticks out quite far, or however it'll help you remember. Almost all insects undergo some type of body change within their lifetime, and this is called metamorphosis. There's two types, usually complete and incomplete metamorphosis. With incomplete metamorphosis, the nymph hatches from an egg and gradually develops into an adult. So the nymph looks like an immature version or a very small version of the adult insect. It will have underdeveloped wings, it won't have reproductive organs yet, and the nymph will have to molt several times until it becomes the adult form. Here are some examples of insects that undergo incomplete metamorphosis. And you can see how the nymphs are slowly starting to look like the adult. Then we have complete metamorphosis, and this is where the larval stage looks nothing like the adult stage. You've got flies, butterflies, you can add beetles to this. but they lay their eggs, and then there's a larval stage that has to eat and grow, and then they go into the pupal stage, and then you've got the adult version. Here we'll talk about butterflies. They have a worm-like larva called a caterpillar that hatches from the egg. Caterpillars will have 3 pairs of jointed legs on their thorax and lots of unsegmented legs on their abdomen. They are vegetarians and cause lots of damage. The larva has to molt several times to grow. And then the last larval stage will find a spot on a branch and hang upside down. And then they cover themselves and become a pupa or chrysalis. The pupa stage is where this insect can go from larval to adult. They encase themselves in a chrysalis. If it's a moth, they make a cocoon, and if it's a fly, they make something called a puparium. The pupa, when they're in that pupal stage, the larval tissue will break down and change slowly into the adult form. And then when they're done, then they come out and you see the adult. Insects that undergo complete metamorphosis, like I said before, include butterflies, moths, beetles, mosquitoes, bees, flies. Many insects go through this. The reason that metamorphosis is so important is because it helps to reduce competition between the adult and the larva. That way many more organisms can live in one area and not have issues as far as food and space. It also helps insects survive harsh weather conditions. Most butterflies and moths spend the winter encased in their chrysalis or their cocoon so they can make it through that bad weather, and then they emerge in the spring as the adult. This takes us to the end of this section of notes. You can continue on to the next part, or you can take a break again.